I'm here with the guardian of Roxie, and Roxie is outside. There's a little dog run. She's in there with the other two dogs that live in the house, and Prince, and what's the other dog's name?
Cash.
And Cash. Cash with a K. I went out to try to interact with her a little bit, and she was so reactive, she kind of bloodied her nose up trying to charge the fence. So she's definitely a dog that we need to work with. And in this video, I'm going to go over how you can do what I like to call petting with a purpose. Now, when dogs act this way, there's a lot of reasons for it, but a lot of dogs get the impression they need to be in charge of their humans due to lack of rules, or they're confused about other things. The guardians here have done a really good job with rules, much better than all my clients, just about. But the dog probably could use a little bit more exercise, and that probably is getting petted at times that we would like it not to be petted. Now, it's important to understand that anytime you are petting your dog, you are rewarding your dog for whatever it is specifically doing at that time. And this includes unbalanced states of mind. That one of the guardians mentioned during the 4th of July, Roxie was fearful and kind of sitting next to him, kind of cowering, and he was petting her to try to relax her. And that's a very common thing that humans do. If we have a baby that falls down, we kiss their boo-boo, pick them up and rock them and make them feel better. Problem is, for dogs, that backfires. That's going to amplify that fear, or the stress, or the anxiety, or the jumping, or any of those things. A lot of people train their dogs to get excited when they come home. They come home, the dog's all excited, we pet it. Because most of the time when we come home, our partner's not going, yay, you're home. Well, the dogs do that, and we pet them. We make them more excited each time we do that. But also, what if the dog does Roxie ever come up and like nudge you with her nose or paw at you when she wants attention from you?
No.
Okay, would it be fair to say she gets petted so much she doesn't have to ask for it?
Yeah.
There you go. So if I am given everything, well, then I get a distorted perception of reality. I think the world is my oyster. And that's going to make me not act as appropriate as I should in certain situations. Now, a lot of dogs will come and nudge the guardian when they want attention. They're telling the guardian what to do, and the guardian, of course, does it. And that tells the dog, yeah, I'm in charge of the guardians. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you guys to, even if you just want to pet them and she's not nudging you, but especially if she does nudge or paw or barks for attention. If she barks at me for attention and I pet her, then she's told me what to do. And I said, yes, you are the boss of me. I'm listening to what you say. So instead, when she comes and nudges you, barks at you, or does anything, you're going to give her, she nudges you with your nose, instead of petting her and validating that she's in charge of you, give her a counter order. Tell her to sit. When she sits, pet her under her chin. When a dog feels good about itself, his nose is parallel to the ground or tilted upward. Insecure dogs look down. Reaching over to pet a dog's head creates a down nose orientation for most dogs. So because they feel good when their nose is in the air, I want them, when I'm petting them for doing things I want them to have that nose in the air. Petting them under the chin facilitates that. You can caress and you can scratch, just never pat, but it's a good idea not to get a hand over the dog's head. Just like me, I'm a tall guy, but if some guy came over and put his hand over my head, I kind of duck down a little bit. And the dogs do that as well. So all things being equal, scratch on the chin, you can scratch your butt anywhere else, just don't ever pat on top of her head. So when she comes over and nudges me, she says, hey, pay attention to me. Instead of paying attention to her, I give her a command to sit, a counter order. When she sits, I pet her under the chin and I say the word sit and only the word sit. Not good sit, not Roxie sit, just sit. They hear inflection too. Sit. And I can pet her as much as or little as I want. I just pet her one scratch, or I could pet her for 9 hours straight. She has to do something to pay for her attention by sitting. If she's already sitting here, ask her to come and sit over here or ask her to lay down. So she's going to have to do something to pay for attention through obedience. Now, after a while, what will happen is instead of, if she comes and tells us what to do, that's a leadership mindset. If she comes in and asks by sitting, asking is a follower's mindset. And that's what will happen is she'll start coming and sitting in front of you to prepay for that attention. Look, I'm sitting. Shouldn't you be petting me behind the ear? We should as much as we can. And if you don't want to do it, just scratch her once and then go back to doing what you're doing. Otherwise, she'll go back to nudging or barking or doing all the rest of the things. Now, I had a woman in Santa Monica, I'm explaining this to her, and her dog's sitting there next to the couch, and she's petting her dog, and she goes, well, I have a question for you. I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask you to stop petting your dog real quick. And she goes, okay, but I mean, I'm tactile. I like dogs, and I got a dog because I want to pet it. I shouldn't have to ask the dog before I pet it. You're petting your dog again. I'm sorry. That's all right. Just hold off on petting your dog till we get done with it. She goes, okay. But I also have high blood pressure and hypertension, and my dog says that petting a dog will lower my blood pressure. You're petting your dog again. I'm sorry. 3 times in 15 seconds of me asking her not to pet her dog and her intending not to pet her dog, she involuntarily reached over and petted her dog. So I have a word for this. I call it paycheck. So if I come in the room and see that somebody's petting Roxie, I say paycheck. If that person says, no, David, you missed it. I asked her to do something and you were upstairs, you didn't see it, and I'm still petting her. The dog, Roxie's like, okay, he's on one page, David's on another page, I can be on my own page over here. One of the worst punishments for a dog is to be excluded from the group. So if she's kind of on her own, then that's kind of like helping her to be like, I can be over here, they can be over there. It just is disconnecting the whole situation. So instead what I do is I come in the room, I see somebody's petting without a purpose. I say paycheck, that person has to stop petting, tells her to sit, even if they did it the right way, or lay down or whatever it is. Don't do shake. And then as soon as she sits, we pet her on her chin, and they can say, David, I actually asked her to sit. When you flushed the toilet, she stood up, and I continued petting her, and you said that is allowed. And I am David, and I do say that is allowed. So it's just a gentle reminder, because we won't realize we'll probably pet our dog hundreds of times a day. And if we are petting when the dog's doing things we don't like it puts its paw on you, and you keep on petting it, that's a way of dominating you. So what I do is I'm petting the dog, and as soon as the paw comes up to do this, I stop petting. But most people wait until the paw gets here before they stop petting. What I would do is, as I'm knowing it's coming, as soon as I'm petting the dog and I see the dog's paw lift off the ground, that's when I would stop petting. When it's like an inch off the ground, well before it gets to here. So being able to recognize your timing of your disengagement is really important. I talked off camera with the guardians. Petting a dog is a great way to reward what they're doing. Stop petting a dog is a great way to also disagree with what they're doing. So I'm petting the dog as everything's comfortable, then the dog puts his paw here, then I stop petting. And after enough repetition, the dog's like, oh, so as soon as I do this, they stop petting? Well, I'll just keep my paws down here. Well, yeah, that's a more respectful body mechanic. And to answer her question, even if you do want to pet your dog, and in this house, it sounds like the dogs are just petted so much they don't really have to ask for it, the people in the house should still ask the dog to sit to earn that affection. Now, just like us, if I'm given something, I can appreciate it, but if I have to work hard and earn it myself, I have deeper appreciation for it. And this has the same impact on dogs. So if we pet the dog for no reason, that's like kind of giving them things without any conditions. So what we do instead is we tell the dog to sit. When it does comply, then we pet it on its chin. If we say sit once, it doesn't sit, then I walk on to other things. I'm on to other things. You missed your opportunity to get my attention. So when it does sit, then I pet it on its chin and I say the word sit. Well, what this does is three things. First of all, it helps the dog see the human as the authority figure. Because when the dog tells the human what to do, nothing happens. But if the dog does what the human says, they get a reward. They're motivated to do that. Number two, the dog is earning that affection. It's not being given it to it, it's earning it itself. So you get that boost of self-esteem that helps the dog be more confident. Most dogs are aggressive or reactive, are insecure. Helping build up a dog's confidence through this sort of interaction is a wonderful way to boost that self-esteem and that confidence up. The third thing it does is helps the dog practice getting itself into a sit, which seems like a small thing. Sitting is the easiest trick that most dogs learn. But sitting is also an indication that I'm comfortable in a situation. If somebody's in the room and she doesn't like that person, she's not going to sit down. She's going to stand up because she wants to be ready to rock. So when she's sitting on her own, if I tell her to sit and she sits, that doesn't indicate the same thing as if she sits on her own. She's saying, yeah, I'm relaxed around this person, put myself at a disadvantage. So, but it's going to be hard for her to do that. Now, you can tell her to sit, and you can kind of emulate it a little bit. I usually, if I'm reading a dog behavior, I want to do it on its own. But if I do have a guest come over, she's kind of like staring, she's not really happy, and I tell her to sit, and she sits, that's going to make her less authoritative. And so that helps her practice not being so dominant and aggressive towards the person. But it's going to be hard for her to do that unless we practice in other situations. And when everybody's calm and comfortable, and we tell the dog to sit, that's the easiest version possible. The more we pet the dog for that, the easier it is for the dog to do in other situations. So if we pet our dog with a purpose, every time we pet our dog, it's a micro dog training session that increases the dog's respect for us as an authority figure, boosts the dog's self-esteem because it's earning that affection itself, and it's practicing a behavior that is more subordinate and practicing listening to humans. So there's really a trifecta of positive things that you get every time you pet your dog. And after a while, you won't even think about it. You just pet your dog, you tell your dog to sit and then pet it. So now we're petting our dogs for things that we want as opposed to things we don't want. One of the things I mentioned in The Guardian is most people in the US train their dogs to misbehave. The dog comes and sits in front of us, we ignore it. It lays down in front of us, we ignore it. We come to us, we ignore it. But boys, as soon as it grabs this and runs across the room, we get up and chase it. And since good attention and bad attention are the same thing for dogs, well, if the dog's goal is to get my attention and doing the wrong things to get your attention, I'm going to misbehave. You've taught me to misbehave. Well, with petting with a purpose now, we're rewarding the dog for the things that we do like. And so that creates a positive association and motivation for the dog to continue doing things to please us. Now, I have another offshoot of this that I call passive training, and it's a little bonus part of this video. Passive training is the way that parents potty train children. Every time that the kid goes to the bathroom, the first time the kid's in the bathroom, the parents make a big deal out of it because they're so tired of changing the poopy diapers. They want the kid to know that was the greatest thing ever. So they make a huge deal. Well, same sort of thing works for dogs. So training a dog to do things, you have to lure them into position, and then when they each individual steps, and then you reward them and mark it. Well, for passive training, it's really like cheating. So every time that Roxie comes to you, pet her and say the word come. When you didn't ask her to, when she did it on her own. Every time she sits next to you, pet her and say sit. Every time she just lays down, pet her and say, I like to say crash or chill, but whatever your word is to lay down. Every time she brings you a toy, name each individual toy. Now, all bones can be bones, all balls can be balls. But if she has a zebra, brings you that, pet her and say zebra. Little elephant, call it Trump. Whatever it is. And so now you create a vocabulary, and you want to play with her. You say, go get me, Gumby. And she brings you a carrot, and you're like, I don't want the carrot toy, I want the Gumby toy. And she comes back, and eventually she brings it to you, and then you pet her. So you're creating that vocabulary, boosts her self-esteem, and you have more of the ability to kind of communicate what you do and don't want from her. Like I mentioned off camera, a lot of all aggression comes from stress. A lot of stress comes from frustration. And frustration often comes from miscommunication. And so if we can come up with a clear communication, sit means sit, down means down, and I have to ask and pay for these things through petting with a purpose, the dog gets that boost of self-esteem. But for passive training, it's just waiting for the dog to do the things it wants, it's going to do anyways, and just marking it within that 3-second window and saying the command word. Great example of this is I have 4 dogs, and they have a unique command word to eat. I say chow, grub, feast, and lasagna. And I like using funny command words. So when my first dog's word to eat, his word is chow. I have 4 dogs in the kitchen. I invite that first dog to come and eat. When he eats, he takes a first bite of food and hears the word chow. Well, when he hears the word chow, there's food in his mouth. So to him, chow means food in my mouth, or I eat. The other 3 dogs hear chow, there's no food in their mouth. So it doesn't mean the same thing to them. And I taught him through passive training. So every time my dog took a bite of food for 2 or 3 months, I said the word chow once after the first bite of food. After a while, chow became the command word. So some of the examples for passive training is every time a dog takes a drink of water, I say agua. The guardians here might want to use Spanish, German, and so come up with a German word for, I like funny command words, since I don't know if anybody else in the house speaks German, but maybe you say cocktail, or, Hefeweizen, or, some word for beer or something that we think is kind of funny. When we have dogs that are aggressive, coming up with funny command words can be very, very beneficial because dogs can read our facial expression. So if I say cocktails and the dog goes over and gets a drink of water, that makes everybody smile and laugh, and that makes the dog feel good about itself and that activity. And it motivates the dog to want to do that activity, and it lightens the mood. When we have guests over, I'm guessing this guardians here are pretty stressed because they're worried that something's going to happen. Well, if we break the mood, it's like you have a stressful situation and, with a bunch of people at a table, and then you have another friend that comes up who's the life of the party and starts cracking jokes. After a while, the tables all laugh and you take that tension off. And so one of the things I'd like you guys to do is, as you're training your dogs for new commands, we're getting a little bit off subject here, I'll wrap this up in a sec, but try to come up with funny command words for passive training. If I want my dog to roll over, I don't say roll over, I say stunt dog, and the dog flips over. So coming up with these funny command words can really help. And so for passive training, anything your dog does on a regular basis, come up with a command word, pet it within 3 seconds of it, and then say whatever that funny or normal command word is for it. After a while, the dog will start to offer those behaviors, and petting with a purpose and passive training kind of come together in the middle, where the dog's either prepaying for it, or you've taught the dog that every time you sit, man, I'm going to come over there and give you attention. And the dog will start offering that sit more and more often because that's what the dog's primary purpose is. So this is what I like to call petting with a purpose with a bonus on passive training.